Let me say good afternoon to everyone. I am Roger Casey, the 9th president of McDaniel, and it is my honor and a delight to see all of you here today. I know that many of you have joined us because you are here celebrating Golden Reunion Weekend, and I want to welcome you back to the Hill for your class reunion. I think it's particularly significant that we're holding this event today, as today we welcome the classes of 1969 and earlier. And I say it's important because all of these graduates graduated before the passage of Title IX. When you were students, the world and this campus were very different places, especially for women. I've looked forward to today's event for quite some time because today we get to celebrate the trailblazers, the leaders, the pioneers, the women who, in spite of many obstacles they encountered, trained and competed as Green Terror in a world in where this wasn't recognized nor supported. President Richard Nixon signed Title IX into law on June 23, 1972, as part of the Education Amendments Act. Title IX states, I'll quote, "No person in the United States shall, on the basis of sex, be excluded from participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any education program or activity receiving federal financial assistance." While Title IX never specifically mentioned athletics, its passage and its implementation paved the way for women to train and compete with the same resources and support that male counterparts were receiving. But women's athletics on the Hill did not begin with Title IX. For decades, women had been competing in various club and intramural activities. But despite the existence of these teams and the numbers of women desiring to compete, women's athletic teams were not supported in the way men's teams were. They did not receive funding for equipment needed to compete effectively. They had no locker rooms. Uniforms were designed often more for aesthetics than for competition. You're going to hear about that in greater detail from our alumni panel today. The lack of equality was recognized decades before the passage of Title IX. In fact, in the 1922 Aloha Yearbook, then-editor R.F. Cromwell said this about athletics, quote, "Why not for girls? The girls have little opportunity to show what they really can and would like to do for Western Maryland. Why not give them the opportunity?" So today, you're going to hear from a group of women who might not have been given opportunity, but they certainly created their own. You have heard the phrase, "Nevertheless, she persisted." This is the theme of Women's History Month last year, and this is an anthem of feminism. But the women we're going to hear about today, they not only persisted, they challenged, they overcame, and they conquered as Green Terror. We're not here today to celebrate Title IX. We're here to celebrate what came before, the trailblazers who paved the way for Green Terror women's athletics as we know it today. Before we do so, though, I want to take a moment to thank the person seated next to me here, Kay Smith. Kay was not only the architect and tailor of this jacket that I am wearing, which represents all 22 of our athletes, represents all of the uniforms of all of our athletic programs here. She worked tirelessly and meticulously to research and compile information on our pre-Title IX athletics. She recorded every single time a female athlete was noted in a yearbook or a campus publication. She called hometown newspapers. She reached out to the athletic departments of our opposing schools. And she did it all motivated by a passionate idea that pre-Title IX women deserve to be recognized and honored appropriately. So, Kay, I want to thank you on behalf of everyone here today for your dedication to Green Terror Women's Athletics and to your alma mater, and tell all of you, if you want somebody to head your research project, hire her. So now I would like to introduce Dr. Andy Hoffman, Associate Professor here at McDaniel College, who will introduce our panel of guest speakers. And thank you so much for joining us for this special recognition and celebration. Andy.
Thanks, Roger. Our purpose today is to pay tribute to those who paved the way for others. We have 3 trailblazers who will share not only their memories, but their passion for women's athletics here at Western Maryland, now McDaniel College. For some in today's audience, it will be a stroll down memory lane. For others, it will be a recollection of what your predecessors accomplished prior to your arrival, or possibly an appreciation for what you helped to accomplish during your time on the Hill. For others, our current athletes, it will be an opportunity to challenge your imagination as to how athletics during this earlier time was very different from what you experience today. Listen carefully for policies, procedures, and practices of an earlier time and how some of those would be a violation under today's rules of competition. Kay Coleman Smith, class of 66, Bev Hill, class of 60, and Clement, class of 59, will now enlighten us to the heritage of women's athletics.
Thanks, Andy. Well, before we get our women's sports history lesson, I want to personally welcome all of you, our Pioneer Women guests. While doing my archival research, I repeatedly found your names, your scoring records, and your defensive exploits. I am very proud and thrilled that McDaniel College is honoring your elite level of athletic play here today. All right, so ladies and gents, strap on your running shoes. We're going to get 100 years of history of women's athletics in 20 minutes. And don't tell me you can't keep up. I know you're athletes, so here we go. The history of Western Maryland College's women's pre-Title IX athletics can roughly be divided into 3 periods. The earliest years, from the college's beginning through the 1920s, reflected the conservative social mores of the Victorian era of that time and the religious values of the Methodist churchmen who were prominently on the staffing of the college at that time. Women's lives on this campus were highly constrained, monitored daily by chaperones called proctoresses, who accompanied women students everywhere they went, in the dining hall, in their classes, even had rooms next to them in the dorms, searching and guarding constantly against any unauthorized communication between women students and any males. The only physical activity for our women at that time came in their treks across the hills of this campus, or on supervised hikes into neighboring Carroll County. According to a Goldbug article in 1870, get this, a croquet set was made available to women inclined to more vigorous exercise. That same year, women students were required for the first time to exercise daily using dumbbells, wands, and Indian clubs. These exercises were performed to piano music, which was said to stimulate a more vigorous effort. giving the body grace, beauty, and health. Note the priority order of the concern for our women. They had to get graceful, beautiful, and then maybe healthy. This edition of music was courtesy of our own college's namesake, William R. McDaniel, who, in addition to his professorship in math, his avocation in music, also studied a summer at the famed Sargent School of Physical Education, Harvard. These routines were presented by women students in an exhibition during commencement week in 1889 and were seen by Anna Yingling of the first graduating class of 1871. She, recognizing the need for more space for our growing athletic programs here, donated $4,000 for the construction of the college's first gymnasium, said to be the first on a college campus in this state, named after and paid for by a woman. We could have our ladies. In 1904, we saw the first organized women's intramural basketball games. The women were required to wear a loose white blouse Take your time, walk slowly. We don't see fast either. The women were required to wear a loose white blouse and navy blue flannel bloomers. I didn't catch that navy blue part I got them black. Anyway, we have three current women two basketball players and one volleyball player here today to model these prototype uniforms. Haley, Liv, and Jamise. Thank you, ladies. Before you go, do either of you ladies have any comments on what it might be like to go to your next team practice and go through the drills wearing that? Not. When I had them try them on, Jamie said we couldn't dribble through the legs wearing these. I said, well, that would have been a problem anyway because you only have one dribble. The college catalog in 1904 suggests these uniforms should be made at home from a pattern found in any fashion magazine. I didn't see anything there about the men students making their uniforms. I think Title IX was starting to call. By 1920, the enrollment increased, and the men's students needed more time in the gym. And so the women's time in the gym, you know what's coming, was cut to about 3 hours a week. I've got all these women PE teachers looking at me and saying, yep, we know. The second period of pre-Title IX history began with the hire of Faith Millard in 1921. She, too, had studied at the famed Sargent School of PE. She expanded the intramural program beyond basketball to include class field hockey, class volleyball, class tennis, and class field ball competition. But her biggest legacy lies in her creation of the first, wait for it, varsity women's basketball team in basketball here in 1923, a legitimate basketball varsity team. Her teams were highly popular with the large and raucous student crowds who hung over the track railing, banging on the sidewalls as they clamored chants for their favorite players. Faith's teams were highly successful, and she finished her coaching stint with a .627 win percentage. She scheduled the strongest teams she could find, playing teams in 3 states, Maryland, South Central Virginia, Southeastern Pennsylvania, Washington, D.C., and even a semi-pro team in Baltimore. She understood and used many of the components of modern coaching, including scheduling weaker teams for exhibition games to start the season, and adding team-building exercise activities to bond and unify the team. They played a 6-player game in her days, with the court divided into 3 sections. Players could not cross those division lines. 2 guards on one end, 2 scoring forwards on the other end, and 2 centers in the middle section to get the ball from one end to the other. Only 1 dribble was allowed. The tallest players were 5'8" or 5'9", and more than a few players on those teams were 5'4" or shorter. The campus newspaper wrote an interesting game summary and printed a box score after every single game, often on the front page of the student newspaper. Those of us who played later know that didn't happen. Faith Millard was truly 50 years ahead of her time. She's in our Sports Hall of Fame. Sadly, this good thing was not to last. Millard got engaged to be married, and at the end of the 1929 school year resigned. You couldn't do both. Enter the third period of pre-Title IX history. Millard's departure came at a significant time in U.S. history. The impact of the crash of the financial markets, the end of the freewheeling Roaring '20s, and the excesses of the Prohibition years had left our nation weary and ready to re-embrace conservative ideas. No more varsity. Leaders in both men and women's physical education circles embraced certain medical research that advised against excessive physical exercise for women in college campuses. This was interpreted to mean no varsity team play. And so, Marie Parker, an ardent advocate for the primacy of intramural play, was the ideal hire for Western Maryland College in 1929. A year later, Rose Todd, herself a 28 graduate of Western Maryland, joined Ms. Parker. With a fervor and dogmatic commitment to a program of hotly contested class competitions in 4 team and 2 individual sports, Ms. Parker installed a student organization called the Women's Athletic Association to organize and conduct the intramural tournaments between the classes. Annually, she introduced the WAA and the intramural program to the freshman women in a fall picnic held at Harvey Stone Park. She built in a reward system of points for participation in each intramural sport. Accumulated points could earn a woman a chenille class numerals, the college seal, and the big enchilada for 3 years of continuous intramural play, sport after sport after sport, was the school letter M. I guess you couldn't get a W for Western, so we got an M. This was billed by her as earning your varsity letter, but there was no varsity play involved in getting your M, only intramural games. Sports by those women played were field hockey, basketball, badminton, volleyball, baseball, replaced by softball in 1939, tennis, golf, archery, and hiking. Intramural participation numbers were very high, especially throughout the 1930s. In 1931, 100 women competed in the field hockey class championship. Similar numbers were again achieved in field hockey in 1937 and in basketball in 1937. And these numbers represented approximately 45% of the women students on campus in those years. And numbers, indeed, that Ms. Parker and Ms. Todd could be proud of. Beginning in 1934, a new innovation was added to the palette of women's sports, the Play Day. This was a day-long event where a host college invited 2 to 4 other colleges to bring a contingent of participants to compete in 2 to 5 sports. The schedule would proceed with a round robin of games of shortened length until a late lunch was held. After lunch, awards were presented to the best players in each sport, selected by the PE staff chaperones who had brought their athletes for the competitions. But those staff never coached any athletes in those competitions. This was followed by a social event of some kind, a skit, a talent show, a men's football game on campus that day. Little emphasis was placed on the winners of the sporting events for the reason that you came. The emphasis instead was placed on courtesy and socialization. And indeed, they were fun events, but it was also presumed by the leaders who had brought us there that the competitive desire to win your games was less if punch and cookies was served than if you'd scheduled those games on a separate day as a 1-versus-1 competition. I believe that for elite level players who had little other opportunity to pursue excellence in their chosen sports, winning Playday games meant every bit as much as any other game would have. I think I'm right. 2 Playdays were scheduled every year from 1934 on. Because our field hockey and basketball facilities were substandard in size and slope, Western Maryland could only host field Playdays in the spring, and we did so on May Day for many years. The records show that 1-versus-1 games, us versus another college on a separate day, started in field hockey and basketball in 1941. Only one game. Likely due to the pressure of the athletes in those years, because Ms. Parker was still often quoted as saying, "We do not support the play of outside games with other colleges, except in Playdays." These often quoted words led to the belief, quoted by many still today, that there were no varsity games held here until Title IX. But we've now seen that's not true. Also in 1940, another novel competitive element was added, the telegraphic archery tournament. What's that? On an identified date, archers from colleges all across the country shot a prescribed complement of arrows. It's called the Columbia Round. On the honor system, Ms. Todd would certify the score, and it then would be telegraphed to the host school who was organizing the event. Our own Nancy Winkleman, class of '51, placed third at least once. That's the only record I could find of the results. But at least once placed third, making her the third best archer in the country on that given day. Now let me introduce to you Ann Clement, class of '59, and Bev Hill, class of '60, 2 of the elite women athletes we are honoring here today. Both are in our Sports Hall of Fame. Ann, here in the center, was inducted in 1979 with Julia Burwager, the first 2 women taken into the Sports Hall of Fame. Ann and Bev, our guests today, are probably 2 of the finest field hockey players ever to play at Western Maryland. We'll hear a little bit about that in a minute. Bev will share her stories in a few minutes. But first, let me go to Ann for some of her memories of what women's athletics were like in the 1950s. Ann, could you explain again what the WAA was and its role in women's athletics in the intramural years?
I'll give it a try because I'm old too. The Women's Athletic Association was the backbone of the women's athletics in the 50s. Consisted of all women in WMC who wanted to play. And that was a lot of gals wanted to play. The board consisted, we had a board, and it consisted of 12 people, and 6 were the sponsors of the events that we put on: basketball, badminton, volleyball, and field hockey. And these were the managers of each of the sports. And we actually ran the whole intramural department. And the most competitive competition was the class competition. That was always wild. And everybody loved to compete against each other from the classes for the bragging rights for all year long. Points were given for the standings of how you stood in each of the events. The basketball team, if you won the event, you got so many points, and that was accumulated all year. At the end of your 4 years, a woman or women were awarded the highest WAA award, and that was given at the senior assembly or even at graduation in some events. One of the gals at Caljean Enzer received the highest athletic award, and she received hers at graduation, and she was given a good kiss by her father. If you remember, Dr. Enzer was president at the time.
Ann, could you tell us more about the WAA Freshman Carnival?
Well, the carnival was held below in the Blanche Ward. We just called that the Little Gym. And it was a carnival atmosphere where we had fun games, we had skills, all was put on by the WAA board. And this was basically to introduce the freshman class to all the sports activities and introduce the board members. And so that was very fun. It was more fun for us, I think, than it was for the people that participated. So that was fabulous.
We had a concept called the honorary team. Could you tell us what that was?
The honorary teams were the best of all the intramural players. And we presented, the WAA board presented to Ms. Parker and Ms. Todd a list of the best players. And they chose the honorary team, which basically was a varsity team, but you never said the word varsity, that's for sure. So we did have the play days. These teams played, the honorary teams played against other schools. We had a maximum of maybe 6 games scheduled against other colleges. And sometimes they were scheduled, sometimes they weren't, but we were just happy to go play wherever we were. The bus trips were the best time. Ms. Todd loved us on the bus trip. We sang, we carried on. We even told jokes. I don't know whether she caught on, but she loved every bit of it. Uniforms were the green uniforms that actually we wore for the gym classes. And I never thought I would play basketball in a skirt. That was hard for me after coming from Western High School in Baltimore City, where we wore shorts and shirts. I do remember in field hockey all those black shin guards that we had to wear. And Ms. Todd insisted we wear. That's the only time I had confrontation with Ms. Todd. I did not want to wear those shin guards. They either cut off your leg circulation or fell to your ankles. And in my senior year, trying to run uphill on the slope in field hockey, we didn't want to wear anything that was heavy on the legs, that was for sure. Our gym was so small in Blanche Ward that the officials could put 1 foot on the wall, call the game at half court, and still get paid. Flo Bell told me that story, and I was like, I know, I remember that one. The gym being so small, and actually, you have to remember the 50s, we didn't have practices. The 50s, we tried to get away with anything we could because there were so many rules. So this one, Bev and I borrowed a basketball from the gym, hid it in my closet for night practices. But we were caught by Miss Parker, and that ended that for sure. That was brutal.
Ended practicing? We're boating, don't practice, right?
Yeah. No practices.
Could you share your memories of sorority basketball?
Sorority basketball games were unbelievable in the most competitive atmosphere. Some of the sororities formed teams, and actually the brother fraternities, the men came and cheered the girls on. They packed the gym one end to the other. They couldn't do anything on the sidelines, of course, but they packed each end of the gymnasium, and they rooted for their sisters, which was fabulous, so the whole atmosphere. But no awards were given. We all had bragging rights, but we still remained good sorority, inter-sorority relationships with our competitors. So that was fun.
And now, how about telling us about your special class of 1959 and all those women athletes?
Give a shout out to the class of '59.
I saw some hand go up.
This is our 60th reunion, and it's so good to see everybody come back for it. Our class was exceptional that a special page in the yearbook was dedicated to our athletic abilities for the class of '59. We had 11 players who participated in all sports for 4 years, sports of their choice, of course. 6 were physical education majors who continued after graduation teaching and coaching. 2 were inducted to the Western Maryland Hall of Fame, Carol Pedersen being one from the class of '59. Stand up, Carol. Thank you. We had one classmate that went on for the administration side of athletics. She was the supervisor of physical education in Montgomery County, Betty Reed. All were academically sound with one exception, and you know who that was.
is her story.
I dissected the dogfish for 2 semesters, and I dissected a cat named Roselda, all for PE. But if it weren't for my teammates, I don't think I would have graduated and made it through. So shouts out to class of 59. We were undefeated for 6 consecutive seasons in athletics until our senior year. The freshmen beat us in field hockey, and they called us grannies. In the fall, right after the fall season, basketball came, and we won and got back to that freshman class, and we let out a big cheer, and the cheer was, "We're no grandmas." It's real heartbreaking. But anyway, I know you don't have any more questions, but I'd like to make a comment if you don't mind.
No, go
Thank you.
ahead.
Despite all that was lacking in women's athletics at WMC, I loved every minute of the competitive spirit and friendships formed at WMC and through athletics. The highlight, I think, of my playing career in 1968 was my last national field hockey tournament at Goucher College. Miss Todd watched 2 of her girls play tough against Philadelphia, which was the #1 team in the country. And I'll tell you, that was very special to see her up on the hill and just cheering us on. So that was special to me. The college gave me 30 years career in teaching and coaching in the best high school system and college system in Baltimore County. I thank you all for the opportunity to tell it like it was. And I know Kay has a few of her own stories to tell. Thank you.
I just have one, and it relates to when my class in 1966 was playing its first ever game in Gill Gym, the old Gill Gym. The afternoon before that game was to be played in the evening, Ms. Todd told us to come down to her office, which is in the basement of Blanche Ward, and we could pick up our uniforms. But she cautioned us not to put the uniforms on until we got to Gill Gym. And there was no locker room in Gill Gym for us, so that meant we were going to have to change in the girls' public bathroom, which wasn't very big. So we asked her, well, why can't we wear the uniforms to Gill Gym? And her answer was, quote, if we dressed in our uniforms in our rooms and then walked to the gym, the boys in the dorms would see our legs. This was a curious answer indeed, because all we could think of was, well, once we get in the gym and we're playing, I think they're going to see our legs then. And I don't think Ms. Todd was really the one who wanted us to play over there. Now we're going to hear from Bev Hill, class of 60, 1986 inductee into the Hall of Fame, who has excelled as an athlete here on campus for many years after. She's anxious to talk. Teacher, coach, and in a reinvention of herself after she retired from teaching and coaching as a physician's assistant. Now, Bev, it's time for you.
I can tell you both of these people's memories are a lot better than mine. I am Bev Hill, class of 60. I am a member of the Hall of Fame, of which I'm very proud. I'd like to welcome you all here. It's an honor to be with so many Western Maryland female athletes, and I'm so glad that the college has chosen to honor you, us. I think it's a testament to the leadership of Dr. Casey and to the strong traditions of Western Maryland College, of which we should all be proud. My sincere thanks to Kay for her exhaustive and impressive research regarding the athletic programs at WMC pre-Title IX. For those of us who lived through and played sports at WMC during that era, I believe her presentation was a learning experience for a lot of us here today, or at least a reminder of the good old days. I'd also like to recognize the planning committee and thank them for their extraordinary effort regarding this event. When I mentioned to one of my college teammates that this event was to take place and that I had been asked to comment on the athletes and the athletic programs as I knew it, I was a little anxious as to how I could accurately describe this. But she advised me very well. She said, just tell them there were only a handful of us who played for the college, and there was no program. So that's the end of my speech. But let me try to share with you what I do remember and recall about the way things were. In essence, there really was no program, or at best, what was often termed in physical education, a program of low organization. Opportunities to participate were strictly word of mouth, such as, you want to go play St. Agnes at a basketball game? I said, oh yeah, sure. But I don't remember team list, and I don't remember the fact that each game there seemed to be different people playing for us. But anyhow, we went, we had a good time. Practice, as these ladies had noted, was strictly forbidden. That was easily enforced by Ms. Todd because the aging basketballs were stored away, locked in the closet in the physical education office. And to get them, Clemmy and I did a lot of underhanded stuff. I don't remember too much about the makeup of the teams. I don't remember how you got to be a captain or what your responsibilities were. I do know that the person who was selected had to do all the arrangements for the season. For instance, scheduling the games, which you had to do in writing. There could be no telephone calls. Nothing was easy, no telephone calls. In my era for basketball, the season was limited to 6 games, 1 a week, and only in the month of February. That was challenging. Funding for the officials meant for the captain to go to the treasurer's office, which was across the road, to get a check to pay the officials. This was overseen by the college treasurer, whose name was Mr. Schaefer, or Mr. Scrooge, I'm not sure which, because when you got over there, you got a lecture. He found the expenses to be extravagant and unnecessary. So you can imagine, some little kid going over there and telling him we needed money. It was a daunting chore. During my undergraduate days, I managed to become the youngest national basketball official in Maryland. Kay keeps asking me if I still have my striped shirt. Thanks to the mentoring of my high school coach, who was Julia Berwager, class of '39, and Ann Clement, the first 2 women inducted into the Hall of Fame. And I'm repeating this here today because this was a really historical moment for the college. And it's something that I think we should celebrate each year through the Hall of Fame. I mean, it was just an extraordinary thing. There was no officiating class for the majors. I was able, through my position as an official, to get Baltimore officials like Flo Bell, who was really a legend in women's sports, and Betty Hallmark, who was a Western Maryland alum, to come up and help us with the program. They were also Baltimore field hockey players that Ann and I played with over the years. The only evidence of any help from the physical education department was that Miss Parker always loaned me her shiny new black Plymouth so that I could get to Baltimore and officiate games. I thought it was a really sweet gesture, but I remember it as the way sports were at Western Maryland. The program did not provide uniforms. We had the notorious pennies that these ladies have told you about. The program did not provide money for post-game meals, even though wherever we played, whenever we played, we always got back when the dining hall was closed. I'm not sure if that was a good idea or a bad idea. The lineups were also the responsibility of the captain. Now, Miss Todd always went with us to the games wherever we were, but she was definitely a silent partner. With one exception of one incident which occurred during my reign as a captain. We were playing an away game, I don't know where we were, It was a close game, and as the clock ticked down, I called a timeout, and I explained to the team that we were going to freeze the ball so that the clock would run out and we would win the game. Good thinking. It was not a terribly unusual thing to happen, but Miss Todd, when she overheard my instructions, invited me to join her on the bench for the remainder of the game, and she told me after the game that that was not a sporting thing to do. In fact, it was unsportsmanlike conduct. Now, as a 20-year-old, self-proclaimed hotshot athlete, I was not amused. This is of a little more interest when I learned many years later that the same lecture had been provided to the then captain. Same situation, same outcome, verbatim. No evidence of any growth, change, or interest in modernizing the program. However, as time went by, as is often the case, this became an example to me of how Miss Todd came to be endeared by me. We were good friends for as long as she lived. She was one of 2 women professors who taught in the physical education department, period. They lived in Old Main. Old Main was one of the original structures on campus. They took all of their meals in the dining hall, and they remained on campus for 40 years. And I doubt that they got rich during this process. I remember Miss Todd, Miss Parker, often and fondly. I cared for them then and now. They were very good to me, and they are an important part of the very special experiences I had at Western Maryland. They were and are very dear people that I was fortunate to know here. However, as time went by, became an example of that was our example of coaching, okay? Pretty narrow. Another unique example of the basketball interscholastic schedule concerned the matter of record keeping. After Title IX, this became a key factor in recruiting varsity players, obviously, in providing scholarships, and in determining a player's success. Becky Martin, the college's premier coach, for whom I have a great deal of respect, has always maintained, and this is sort of a joke between Becky and me, that she broke my scoring record when she came to campus in the 80s. It's a statistic that has always amused her current players because they look at Becky and then they look at me, and it's like this midget had a scoring record. You know, what was going on here? But I've always reminded Becky of a little-known fact that was part of my basketball experience, all in good humor, of course, here. At the end of every season, Miss Todd would erase the scorebook and reuse it in order to avoid the expense of buying a new scorebook. You laugh, but your records and mine were probably erased. And that was the charm of interscholastic athletics at WMC pre-Title IX. My sport was field hockey. Ann Clement, with us today, a truly superior athlete at Western Maryland, and I played Baltimore field hockey, which was part of the Southeast Amateur National Program. It was a source of players for the U.S. Olympic team. Ann and I were encouraged, constantly so it seemed, to play intramural hockey for the college. The facility that was provided by the college, however, was a very small, non-regulation size area with a pasture-like surface that was squeezed into the space between the back of the dining hall and Blanche Ward. And it was all on about a 30-degree angle. The inappropriateness of this playing field was never fully recognized by the administration, and even that didn't last long. There was no evidence to expand or improve athletics for women during that era. And so that's how it was in the good old days at WMC. To call the program viable or tenable would be a misnomer. This was not supported in any way by the facilities we had, the coaching, the recruiting as we know it, and not something that attracted exceptional athletes or met the needs of competitive exceptional athletes. And there were some of those even then at WMC. I'd like to mention two such athletes at this time. They graduated just prior to my arrival. They also played Baltimore hockey. They played Baltimore hockey because, in essence, there was no hockey on campus. Bobby Davidson, class of 53, and Mary Jane Davidson, class of 56. Both of these women are deceased at this time. Now, I want to make clear before I wind down here, I don't want to leave anybody here with the feeling that because we didn't have this, or because this was so limited, or what have you, that this impacted negatively on my love for the college or for the two sweet souls, Miss Todd and Miss Parker, who devoted so many years of their lives to their students and Western Maryland, and who did all that they could, actually, to provide a quality athletic physical education experience, given the administrative, philosophical complaints at the time. I submit evidence to the contrary in my latest contribution to I Love the Hill program. And at the end, you have to finish this sentence for me. I love the Hill because there's a soft spot in the heart of all graduates that is conferred with every diploma. It guarantees an affection for the college that is permanent. This is somewhat and somehow reciprocal. The love, affection, and warmth for WMC, for my years here, is always returned to me on every trip back, no matter how long the time between visits or the passing of years. It is and always will be a special place in my heart that time cannot erase. Get ready. And why every graduate I've ever known, including me, can be counted on to say, it was the best 4 years of my life. Come on, guys, admit it. It was the best 4 years of my life. It's been a pleasure, and I hope to see you all again.
Thanks, Ann and Bev, for your entertaining and illuminating recounting of your real-life experiences here as a pre-Title IX woman athlete. Faced with these limitations to their varsity experiences, when they left the Hill, many of these elite women athletes were motivated to provide opportunities for others that were denied to them. And that is why so many of our women sports pioneers became successful teachers, coaches, administrators, doctors, lawyers, and corporate leaders, where they taught, coached, and mentored the next generation of young women to success. One signature of the pre-Title IX years was the development of the highly esteemed physical education major for women here at Western Maryland. Working closely with the Maryland State officials of certification in 1935, a mere 4 years after she was hired, Ms. Parker graduated the first 3 women PE majors in the state, certified to teach physical education in Maryland high schools. Throughout the 30s, 40s, and 50s, women PA majors were required to teach and officiate hundreds of hours in local recreation athletic leagues, Carroll County sports, and the intramural programs here. This trend of rigor in academic preparation in the PE department continued throughout the Todd and Parker years. And in later years, under the leadership of Athletic Director Dr. Dick Clower, class of 50, he's here, over there, wave your hand. He told me not to ask him to stand up. And Dr. Sam Case, class of 64, no longer with us, led to the growth and current renowned reputation of the Department of Kinesiology. Ms. Todd and Ms. Parker retired in 63 and 65 respectively, and with them, the constraints on varsity play imposed during the intramural era. In 1963, Joan Wires was hired. Wave your hand. And immediately, the varsity experience started looking like a real varsity, with tryouts, practices, novel idea, between games, and the number of games on the schedule increasing every year, and strong bench coaching. In 1966, the basketball varsity team started playing all its home games in Gill Gym. which brought increased campus interest and game attendance. In 1968, Carol Fritz joined the faculty, and after that, it was no holds barred. That's Carol. As Western Maryland raced toward full varsity play, Carol coached basketball through its transition to the 5-player game and started varsity volleyball competition in '68. We'll hear some more about her in a few minutes. But let me close with these thoughts. History is the record of many stepping stones from our past to the present. We have just taken a brief snapshot look at one of those pathways, that of women's athletics at Western Maryland, from its early days up until 1972. But we ignore or forget our past at our peril, for all that we are in any sphere of our lives is built on the stepping stone from our past. We cannot truly understand who we are, and certainly not appreciate what we have, without honoring how we arrived here and who led the way. In the 1920s, our basketball court in the former basement of the dining room of Science Hall had those support beams down the center. In the 1930s, the newly built Blanchard Hall gym had concrete walls contiguous with the sidelines. And in the 1950s, as we've heard, the field hockey team played on a field that had a slope of 30 degrees, tried dribbling uphill. In the 1960s, we taped our own ankles and drove ourselves to our away games, and went without dinner if we got back to campus too late. But each of these experiences was a stepping stone toward the future that is McDaniel women's athletics today. And that future is bright, not only because of the skills of current athletes, I think we see some of them over here, and not because it rests on the wisdom and knowledge of coaches and support staff, nor because of the strong institutional support the teams receive today. The future is brighter still because of the sacrifices of you, pioneering women who came before. Those women who saw obstacles as opportunities, who met adversity with innovation, who saw limitations as challenges, and who endured and overcame with grace and humor, and who were inspired to pursue your personal athletic excellence despite the clouded vision or limitations imposed by others. A few of you trailblazing women are with us today as our guests. Others couldn't attend, and sadly far too many more are no longer with us. But still, we honor them all, named or unnamed. Your exploits, known to us or lost in the fragments of recorded history. You were our past, and you bequeath to the future of women's athletics your legacy of athletic dreams and achievements. You women, with your iron will to persevere, your hunger to take the field, and find within yourselves new heights of athletic excellence. McDaniel College salutes you today, and I personally thank each and every one of you. You are my heroes. Thank you.
Thanks again to Kay, Bev, and Ann for sharing your memories of and passion for the history of women's athletics here on the Hill. The next phase of today's history lesson has been prepared by Becky Martin, women's basketball coach. It is an honor for me to share Becky's information on Title IX and its effects on women's athletics here at the college. We'll begin by taking a look at the bigger picture. This is the language as adopted by Congress in 1972. The key words were participation, benefits, and discrimination, and of course, on the basis of sex. Yet one word is never mentioned: athletics. When you ask most people about Title IX, their response will be something similar to, it was to increase athletic opportunities for women and/or it forced schools to drop men's sports. Actually, it was to address discrimination in education, specifically at institutions that received federal funds. The challenge was how this ambiguous law would be interpreted and implemented. After court cases by institutions and individuals, athletic programs would be included, especially when federal funding was accepted by the institutions. So in 1975, not only was intercollegiate athletics included, so were clubs and intramural athletics. Change takes time. Cultural changes, values, beliefs, and mores take time. The 4 examples provided here seem almost laughable today. Psychological. Women were capable of childbirth and sometimes multiple births, so how could competition be too stressful? Sociological. The female image, anything a woman does is feminine. Physiological. Bulging muscles? Had they included women in research studies, they would have known this to be untrue. Biological. Exercise and sport are considered medicinal and beneficial. Change is also financial. Higher education has been and will continue to be tuition-driven for the majority of the budget. Therefore, careful planning is required for expansion of teams and facilities. So let's now focus on recent accomplishments here on the Hill, and to recognize one of this afternoon's special guests, Dr. Carol Fritz. Along with clubs being upgraded in status, new teams were added, especially those that were once co-ed, and rosters were expanded. One impressive statistic: the number of women head coaches doubled. It went from 2 to 4. I know I'm going to hear something from Dr. Clower on that one. Statistics never lie. Every team experienced an expansion of their schedule from the early 70s to the early 80s. One sport with a significant increase was volleyball. At the time, there were no divisions. You competed against the best possible opponent, and that's what Carol Fritz did. The teams in red are now in Division II or I, as we know the system to be today. Remember, Kay, Bev, and Ann's description of the early facilities, size, location, and time of day for practice all improved during this era. An important change from the play day era was conference play and championships. For those sports not included in the Middle Atlantic Conference, Carol Fritz was instrumental in forming the Penmar Athletic Conference. For 10 years, women competed in national championships under their own governance structure, the AIAW. And it was created at the same time Title IX was being developed. AIAW gradually joined forces with the NCAA and was discontinued in 1983. The first 2 teams to participate at the national level in postseason competition were volleyball and swimming. Swimming was represented by individuals and relay teams. Stay tuned for future updates. And now, Debbie Seidel, President of the Alumni Association, will honor today's special guests, our pioneers in women's athletics. Thank you.
So today we're celebrating the Trailblazers. I think that's the new title now. And at this time, I have the great honor of reading the names of those exceptional pre-Title IX athletes that we have here with us today. When I read your name, please stand up to be recognized and awarded a varsity letter for your athletic accomplishments during your time here on the Hill. And then at the end of the session here in the gym, the honorees can stay behind because we do want to get a group picture as we're proceeding over to Klitsburg Pavilion. So as we're breaking up, just stay where you are, honorees. Okay, so I'm going to go with more current classes and work my way back in time. So hold on. So Fran McCabe, class of 1972, basketball, field hockey, and volleyball. Okay. Carol Schmidt Sonnefield, class of 72, volleyball. Linda Earl Steen, class of 72, basketball and volleyball. Caroline Warfield Winchester, class of 72, basketball, field hockey, and volleyball. Nina Naper Grove, class of 71, basketball, field hockey, and volleyball. Virginia Brace, class of 1969, basketball, field hockey, golf, and tennis. She rocked. Sue Mauby Heritage, class of 69, tennis. Betsy Horton Kinner, class of 69, basketball. Sarah Lednam Shockley, class of 69, basketball, field hockey, and lacrosse. Maggie Elgin, class of 1967, basketball, field hockey, volleyball, and tennis. I need to go back up and recognize Sarah Shockley is in our Sports Hall of Fame. Kay Coleman Smith, class of 1966, basketball, field hockey, volleyball, and Sports Hall of Fame. Hey, you didn't stand up. Sherry Fisher Manning, class of 1965, field hockey, golf, as well Sports Hall of Fame. Mary Ellen Coleman Quinby, class of 1965, field hockey. A. Weller Leisure, class of 1964, field hockey and badminton. Janet Pricer Warman, class of 1962, basketball, field hockey. Rebecca Heidi Stevens, class of 1964, field hockey. Bev Hill, 1960, basketball, field hockey, and Sports Hall of Fame. Just stay right there, because the next one's Ann Clement, 1959, basketball, field hockey, volleyball, softball, Sports Hall of Fame. Betty Reed, class of 1959, basketball, field hockey, volleyball, and badminton. Carol Pedersen Willen, class of 1959, basketball, field hockey, volleyball, softball, and Sports Hall of Fame. Patricia Herman Douglas, class of 1954, basketball and field hockey. Yay. Joan Kellogg Patterson, class of 1954, basketball and volleyball. Nancy Kasky Voss, class of 1954, field hockey. Charlotte Bonneville, Clendaniel, class of 1953, basketball, field hockey, volleyball, and softball. Janet High Lewis, class of 52, basketball and field hockey. And last but not least, Sue Dixon Hines, class of 1949, field hockey, volleyball, tennis, and softball. Thank you to each of you for your dedication and your perseverance, and congratulations. And I am just really proud of all of you after hearing what you went through. Now I'd like to welcome back President Casey.
I think it would be really appropriate for us to all stand and say amazing congratulations to these women. Thank you. Your achievements honor us, so we honor you today. And although this M is incredibly historically accurate, if you don't want the M, you just turn it upside down, you got your W. So it's okay. So it'll work here. I also want to say another special thanks to Andy Hoffman and this incredible panel of Ann Clement, Bev Hill, and Kay Coleman Smith. Thank you so much. We have a nice little bouquet here for you, Kay. So. We had an entire committee of people who focused on putting this event together today. I think it was sometime this summer. I remember it was hot weather when Kay came to see me and said, "I've been working on a little project." And I said, "Let's set it up in the conference room just outside the president's office." It took up the whole conference room in the president's office, and we said, "We've got to do something about this." Little did we know then that we were going to be able to do it this year. So thank you all very much for that. There's a committee that made that possible. Can I ask each one of those folks who worked on the committee, don't be shy, please stand up so we can thank you for what you did to make today possible. And for all of our former Green Terror athletes who are here with us today, your dedication, your persistence, and the love of the sport has left a lasting legacy for our young female athletes. We want to thank you so much for what you have done. And I also want to say she could not be with us today, but we are standing on a court named in honor of one of those incredible women athletes. That is Becky Martin, and if it weren't covered up right now, we had a chance a few months ago to dedicate this court in her honor. I think we should say thanks to Becky for what she's done for this school and for the presentation part about Title IX. So now we come to one more person to talk about today. And we would be incredibly remiss if we did not celebrate this particular person who has made an incomparable impact on Green Terror women's athletics and this community in general. And that person is Carol Fritz. During the 1967-1968 academic year, Carol arrived on the Hill. She received her master's degree from Western Maryland in 1969 and her Doctor of Education from George Washington University. Carol served on this faculty for nearly 40 years. She coached volleyball for 23 years, basketball for 13, and softball for 4. Racking up, in just volleyball alone, 575 wins. She also served as our Associate Director of Athletics. She was Western Maryland College's Title IX champion. She ensured Title IX was fully implemented, paving a way for women athletes to train and compete as equals with their male counterparts. For decades, Carol has been a champion of our students and our student athletes. She's been loved and admired for her persistence, her determination, and of course, for her spirit. She was once quoted as saying, quote, "Don't tell me it doesn't matter if you win or lose." It does matter. You wouldn't say that about your job now, would you? So if you visit the memorabilia room off of Klitsburg Pavilion, you're going to see Carol's collection of women's athletic uniforms. They serve as a visual reminder of the obstacles female athletes once faced and the history of sport. Today, we are also unveiling a women's athletic timeline in the memorabilia room. This timeline will permanently reside in this fitting location, and it details women's athletics here on the Hill and serves as a tribute to the women who pioneered sports here, whether pre or post-Title IX. This event culminates Carol's desire to showcase the struggles of female athletes and their achievements. It's my privilege today to share with you, in just a few minutes, I'll ask you to join me as we officially unveil and dedicate the memorabilia room as a newly named Dr. Carol A. Fritz, Master of Education 69, Memorabilia Room. Congratulations. I cannot think of a more appropriate way to recognize our champion of women's athletics than to name this space in her honor. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Carol Fritz.
Thank you, President Casey, the Alumni Association, the Development Office, and all of you that are here today. I'd like to start out to warm you up. I recently got my driver's license back at the DMV, and the lady said to me, "Would you be an organ donor?" I said I'd love to, but I just don't have any that work. But anyway, nobody does this alone. And I've had help all these years. A lot of them represented sitting up here. 2 coaches. We all liked one another because we didn't have anybody else. So the 2 coaches that have helped me, Elaine Goldband at Dickinson and Peg Worthington at Gallaudet, always here to help. We also have friends. I have a Westminster friend that shows me everything, and then she got me kicked out of curves. So, we were having too much fun. Grace is back there, and she helps me every day. Mary Jo and her department, conference services, they help me put up that display. They put up one after the other. Mary Jo is my college person, and she contacts everybody when we have things we have to do. Carol Malloy back here, she represents lots of athletes. She was a 3-sport athlete, and then she was a graduate assistant, and she represents all the graduate assistants that got me through as far as assistant coaches. And she was a coach at Susquehanna and a coach here at McDaniel. So she's here to represent them. Did I miss anyone? I don't know. Okay. The biggest help I had was from Western Maryland faculty. The faculty stood up for us every time and at least made me feel better, because you wouldn't believe what they called me. So anyway, the faculty helped, and Dr. Ralph John, the president that used Title IX as his legacy, and I spent a lot of time in his office trying to convince him. They just didn't get a law and say it's passed. That didn't happen. From 72 to 76, we're just in limbo. And then Grove City, then Grove City takes them to the Supreme Court, and Grove City wins, and athletics was not a part. But you have to have faith, and the Congress of the United States said you're wrong. We think athletics is an important thing, and back it came. So let me tell you what it was like. You heard the history. I hope you see the history in my display, because if you forget where we came from and what you wore to play, you can lose again. Remember that. Anyway, to go through Title IX was like a balancing act, because the people that were affected the most, or think they were our department, our male coaches, and they thought they were going to lose everything if we got something. And it was hard to convince them that we only wanted a piece of the pie. We didn't want the whole pie, because that isn't what they saw. Okay, these are my notes. We wanted a locker room. We wanted a place to practice that was suitable. We wanted access to coaches. We wanted to be able to go in the training room. I don't know if you know this, but our kids sat outside the training room on a bench because they wouldn't let women in. So we wanted access to that. We wanted budgets that we could compete. We wanted in conferences. All of those things are tenets of Title IX that they give you. However, nobody seemed to want us. That's a surprise, right? The conference didn't want us, wouldn't let us in. So we formed our own, didn't we, Nina? And we formed the Penn-Mar Conference, and be darned, we had championships. The state didn't want us because the NCAA didn't want us. So we formed the Association of Intercollegiate Athletics for Women so that we could go. Even the thing that sometimes hurts me the most is that our Hall of Fame didn't want us. It's nothing like going to Boggers, eating your breakfast, and having two men in the next booth trying to figure out how to get rid of Carol Fritz, because I'm ruining their Hall of Fame. Well, they figured it out, and they changed the rules, and that happened to us a lot. So anyway, what we didn't have, we tried to form ourselves. Our kids, athletes, never let it affect their play. Never. We won championships. We were the smallest school in places, but we played hard with all the heart. They played for Western Maryland, and all the other stuff kind of went on the side. Okay, now, get this right. Okay. Western Maryland went through Title IX so McDaniel can enjoy it. We did. We went through it, whatever they said. There are some people here. I have to tell you this story before you leave. Anyway, they built this building, and the volleyball team dressed up in all those uniforms and to get money. And when they put the locker rooms in, we went down and looked at them. They had two big locker rooms and two small. The two big locker rooms had urinals in them, and the two small ones had sanitary products. Now, you didn't have to be a rocket scientist to know where we were going, so it was very discouraging to see that. The president, in his wisdom, had sent over 6 women faculty to look at the locker rooms. And I said to Becky, don't say anything to them. Just take them in and out, take them in and out. And they kept asking to see the locker rooms. And when they were finished, they went straight to the president. And I got a call in my office from the president's secretary. The president wants to see you right away. I said to Joan, uh-oh, can they fire me? She said, I don't think so. You can teach. But I went over and he said to me, "What will it take to make you happy?" I said, "One of those large locker rooms." Well, nobody liked us for that, but he spent $8,000 to tear out the urinals in one of those. So you can imagine that not everybody was happy with me, but I tried. This is what was right, and this is what we had to do, and all the athletes proved that, and McDaniel athletes prove it. But, and I don't think Dr. Casey's still here, but I'll say this to Dr. Casey. Dr. Casey, you will soon hire a women's basketball coach. Don't leave us down. I am so honored for this award. I really am. And it's overwhelming. But all of the things we went through were worthwhile when we see the results and you see the results. So thank you very much for coming. I really appreciate you. Thank you.
I just want to say, Carol, I was behind you because that's where we all need to be. And I would tear out a urinal for you any day of the week with that, I want to say. In a 2007 issue of the Hill magazine, Carol is quoted as saying, "You can never give the sport back as much as the sport gives to you." And I think I speak for all of us when I say you have given us a lot here on the Hill. I want to thank everyone for joining us here today on this special celebration, and I want to invite everyone, please, to stay afterwards, continue the conversation. And if you have classmates who couldn't be here today, please ask them to come back here, and we will make sure they get their letters as well. We want you to join us during homecoming weekend, October 4th through 5th. We'll have our annual Alumni Association Awards and Sports Hall of Fame inductions. And each year we promise to continue to induct incredible female athletes who've made their mark here on the Hill. And so if you'll join me, we're going to proceed out the doors over to the Klitzberg Pavilion, and we will unveil and dedicate the Dr. Carol A. Fritz Memorabilia Room. And also our honorees, if you could stay for a group photo quickly before we move to the Memorabilia Room. Thank you all for being here today. So I thank you again for being here today, and Carol, I can't thank you enough for what you've done for this college and for the words that you shared with us. So it's my honor to, on behalf of the faculty and staff of McDaniel College, to unveil and to dedicate this space as the Dr. Carol A. Fritz, Master of Education 1969 Memorabilia Room. Room in here.
That's overwhelming. I tell you, I can't thank you enough. I was hoping I wasn't buried on the other side. That's beautiful. I am so proud. When I came here, I came from a state school, which is good school, but I soon learned what Western Maryland meant. It meant that if you're the ugliest kid in the class and you ask the best looking one in the class to go with you somewhere, and they were free. They'd go with you. I learned that, and I thought the women deserved everything because they put everything into it. Dr. Casey, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone. So please enjoy the celebration. Come check out the exhibits and have a great Golden Reunion